Let me introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Graeme Waddell, Director of Energen Biogas, a renewable energy company. Graeme's a former business director of Rolls Royce Aero Repair and Overhaul. That was a position of leadership that he had at Rolls Royce. For many years, Rolls Royce employed 1,000 people at East Kilbride, and Graeme managed that unit. He is a fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society and, I'm pleased to say, is a graduate of the University of Strathclyde. Graeme, as well as being fully engaged throughout his career with business and with leadership in business, is a past member of the Skills Committee of the Scottish Funding Council and was a member of the Literacy Commission sponsored by the Scottish Labour Party. He's currently a member of the government's Skills Utilisation Leadership Group and a board member of Scottish Enterprise, and chairs the West Regional Advisory Board and the Scottish Manufacturing Advisory Board. I think we've all been well aware through this theme of graduates for the 21st century and developing attributes in our students that we need very much to engage with the world beyond the university. I'm hoping very much that Graeme will help us open that door and get our students through it. Graeme.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much to Phil and to Claire for inviting me along this afternoon. I thought Anne's presentation was fascinating, a bit scary for me actually, in as much as I hope my children don't listen to that one about how long I'm going to live, because I think they might intervene and my life might not be as long as I would like my life to be. Also, she mentioned about acetates, and I remember, because I'm a lot older than most people in this audience, that and it links into what I wanted to say about attributes as well. First major presentation I've done for Rolls Royce senior directors. How can I describe this? Well, probably like I was in the French Foreign Legion and I was in the middle of the Sahara Desert, because my tongue was stuck to the roof of my mouth. It must have been the worst presentation that anyone had delivered to these directors. But like attributes, it was something I needed to develop, and hopefully when I do this presentation today, you'll find it a bit better than the one that these guys, if you like, experienced. A lot of what I'm going to talk about today is about Rolls Royce and my experience in Rolls Royce, particularly about leadership and how vital I think leadership is, whether it's in the education sector, whether it's in the business sector. And it, if you like, it covers a whole host of areas where if leadership is not as effective as what it could be, I don't think the thing will be successful. Specifically, the question about attributes and, attributes for graduates in the 21st century. I think Anne said this as well, I don't think as a list of attributes. I think there is attributes that become transferable skills, which are really important. And when I use the example about Rolls Royce in terms of their employability, I think that becomes very, very apparent. But it's not just about creating a list. The output of the institutions in education, you're dealing, Anne talked about the global nature of life today. You talk about the public sector, the private sector, you talk about the third sector, you talk about information technology, the knowledge economy. Things are changing rapidly. So I don't think it's about a list of attributes, although transferable skills are clearly important. For me, it's maybe more about how is the student having that confidence to use the information, analyse the information, evaluate the information, and make use, connect that information up. I think these things, in terms of what we should be trying to encourage students to have the confidence to think about, just go beyond a wee bit, just having a list of attributes. But in terms of Rolls Royce, when we used to recruit into East Kilbride, we used to recruit 4 graduates a year, principally aerospace and mechanical engineering from Strathclyde and Glasgow, usually about 10 or 11 apprentices. Now, these 14 or 15 people were put through assessment centres, and we did assess them on attributes I'm sure that you'd all recognise: communication, critical inquiry, presentation, the things I'm sure that everyone would recognise as attributes that we want our graduates to have. So it was very, very important that these students or graduates had these attributes when they came for that interview, because quite frankly, if they didn't and we were assessing them, they wouldn't have been employed by Rolls Royce. So therefore, we used to assess them particularly in team working. Team working is something I'll talk about later, but it's something that we used in our business transformation 9 or 10 years ago. And it's very interesting seeing people and assessing people working in teams. And one of the things that we used to do was role play, really try and put the students into a position that they would be in when they come in, if you like, to the organisation. And I will talk a wee bit about work experience here, which again I think is vitally important. But I was talking to my youngest daughter a couple of weeks ago, and she's doing a Masters at Strathclyde, where else we should be doing it, and she gets assessed on project working as a team. And I was looking at the mark and the report she'd get back and asked her how she was being assessed. And she says they get assessed and they get marked as a team. And I found that quite strange, because in Rolls Royce we would assess people as individuals and their contribution to the team. And not really in when they were working for us and involved in team-based working, not for any other reason, trying to understand if people are not contributing to a team, why are they not contributing to a team? There can be a whole lot of reasons for that, and maybe we needed to find that out. Now, it may not be the same in every institution, and maybe this was a one-off, but it seems to me when you're encouraging students and graduates to develop attributes and confidence working in teams, we should be assessing them as individuals as well as assessing them in what that group output is. But in terms of work experience, it seems to me that one of the other roles I have is doing some work for Glasgow Caledonian University in a business advisory capacity. And about 2 years ago, the business group came together and we were discussing work experience for graduates and how important did we think work experience was. And the consensus of opinion was work experience was very, very, very important. Not only for the student, but also for the prospective employer. One of the things that I had been introduced into the conversation was, well, work experience is so good for students, what about work experience for their lecturers? So we tossed that idea around a wee bit, and the net result was that I took 2 engineering lecturers and 2 business school lecturers from Glasgow Caledonian University and gave them a week's work experience. So that when they went back to be engaging with their students and talking about work experience and the benefits of it, they'd be in a far better position to engage with the students than what they would have been if they didn't do that. Now, maybe something that some of you guys are doing at the moment, but the feedback that we got was extremely positive. But one of the other things which I think is important from an industry point of view, there may be a view which says that when higher education, and again listed from primary school right to lifelong learning, and surely education is about lifelong learning. And there may be a view about which says when you leave university, employers will pick the students up. Sometimes the employer will criticise universities because they don't believe the output that they're getting matches what they need. But again, I think it's been said, we shouldn't assume that business or industry knows exactly what they're looking for, particularly when they project ahead maybe 5 or 10 years. So it's really important, I think, that there needs to be more integration. And I don't mean integration, I mean integration from whether it's in further education, higher education with industry, at the point where there should be more work experience doing this kind of cross movement between lecturers or students coming in, making sure there's more access, for industry, what's going on in the universities. And I really feel that if we can look at it like, we're integrated together in terms of what we're trying to prepare for the future, not only is that going to help the students, but I think it's going to help industry as well. And importantly, when people were successful and came into Rolls Royce, that really, again, for us, we just started their training. They used to go through, the graduates would go through an 18-month training period once we took them from university. And that training period would, because as I say, we'll talk about team-based working, it was a team-based working environment, they were put into teams that were expected to do things, contributing to that team as individuals and as part of the team. They were given secondments. We talked about the global nature of work. All I would say about Anne is that, 28 or 32 jobs seems really excessive to me, given I've worked in Rolls Royce for 34 years. But you can have different jobs within the same company as well. You don't necessarily need to move. But it is, I mean, Sir John Rose, who was our chief executive in Rolls Royce and left in, I think, March this year, he publicly stated that no one would be in a senior leadership position in Rolls Royce unless they had international experience. So the world is a smaller place as a global environment. So some of these graduates in that 18-month programme would go to Singapore or go to Hong Kong or go to areas where obviously Rolls Royce had a presence to gain that cultural experience and engagement with other people. There was one particular secondment which someone might have felt was good or not when they shadowed me. So this girl or boy would shadow me, and they would be involved in not just on the kind of day-to-day operational activities, but at a very early age get involved in real strategic engagement with what was going on both in that organisation and what was going on with our customers and so on. So for 18 months we would work and try and help with the work that had already been taking place, what was going on in the universities. And then it became their first appointment. Now again, whatever that appointment would be, we would only allow them to remain in that job for a year. Because sometimes, it used to be in the past in Rolls Royce, when a graduate came in and went through their training period, they disappeared. We never seen them again. Now that might be more to do with the graduate, personality, whatever, I really don't know. But that's not something with investment that we have put into people. So after a year, even if they're really enjoying the role that we're in, we used to take them out of that role and we used to encourage them to go into another role, all the time gaining experience in different parts of the organisation. And this has nothing to do with engineering because, I'm an engineer by training. But of the 40 graduates over 10 years that we took in for a year, at the moment, well, this is maybe about a year and a half, 2-year-old information, there's probably only about 4 of them who would be following a career in engineering. So the issue about their core discipline is clearly important, but they need to develop and broaden them as individuals, whether it's in your sector, whether it's working with industry, when they get into industry. It's a recognition that they need to develop this broader set of skills in order, if you like, to progress in the roles that they're going to be in. I think the other thing I should say, and so therefore, using Rolls Royce as an example, which may not be true for every area of industry or every sector, is that it was vitally important for these individuals that they actually had attributes which allowed them to engage and become employable, and for Rolls Royce to build on that. But I do believe there is a case for saying that there needs to be more work done, up front, so that we can get a lot closer and integrated together. If we move on then, in terms of looking at the world today, I mean, again, Anna's touched on it. There's no doubt that we face challenges today that I don't think any of us has ever experienced before. And the solution to these challenges, or maybe some of the challenges, the problems that are going to confront us, as Anne said, maybe we don't even know about them at the moment. But I think one thing for me is quite clear. The way we're going to be a better place to meet these challenges, and you guys have got one of the biggest challenges in terms of the funding and the things that you're trying to do with the way the public finances look going forward. But one thing I think is quite clear for me is that we'll be a better place to meet these challenges by collaborating and working in partnership, with the other agencies who are involved in it. And certainly my own experience of the Skills Committee of the Scottish Funding Council under Janet Lowe's chairmanship, doing a fantastic job, and is very keen. I was talking to Phil earlier about leadership and how well we can come together between industry and education and look at leadership going forward. Skills Development Scotland, maybe had a bit of a rocky start when it was taken away from Scottish Enterprise, but really looks as though it's beginning to engage. And certainly the work I do in Scottish Enterprise, a lot of the work we do in collaboration with the Scottish Funding Council, I think can only be done and achieve the things we've achieved by working together. So the world is a very uncertain place, whether it's in education or whether it's, if you like, in industry. I spoke at Glasgow University's, I'm not sure if anyone's here who was there at the Learning and Training Conference about 8 weeks ago. And there was some gasp from some of the things that I'm about to say in terms of maybe they thought it was a bit controversial, but given that I'm not an educationalist, I'm an industry guy, and I'm absolutely getting bamboozled the energy that's coming towards me at the moment. I'm not sure the name of the building, but Glasgow University a number of weeks ago had a sit-in, some of you may remember, with the students protesting about some of the cuts that were going to take place, or were taking place. And again, I don't know a lot about it, but on television, one of the student representatives had been interviewed, and he finished off by saying that one of the biggest problems was that the senior leadership team, or the management team in Glasgow University, were leading it more as a business rather than an education establishment. Now, some of you might think, oh, they're probably right, and that is not the way it should be. My view on that is, I think there is a lot of differences between education establishments and business and industry, but I think there's a lot of similarities, and maybe I could explore them with you. But if you look at our older universities, St Andrews, Glasgow, Aberdeen, Edinburgh, and then the newer universities, a fantastic tradition of learning and teaching. Fantastic. Anne again touched on research. World leading research. Global academic excellence. We don't want that to change. That can remain. But there's maybe some of the things that need to change in terms of the environment and the culture in which these activities are taking place. So you've got these universities doing with a fantastic tradition and heritage, and you've got Rolls Royce, which was world renowned for quality and service, and my particular role was satisfying customers, global customers, in the civil and military engine. So differences, different businesses looking at different things in terms of what we're trying to achieve. But the similarities, there was two similarities that I would draw out. The first one was Rolls Royce has got employees and it has got customers. Universities have got employees and they've got students, but I would bracket that as customers. Now, when I said this at Glasgow, there was sharp intake of breath. How can you classify students as customers? Well, what is a customer? A customer is someone who uses a service, someone who experiences that service and wants to derive satisfaction in that service. Are your students any different? In Rolls-Royce's case, if they experience our service and they're unhappy with our service, they've got a choice, and they may exercise that choice, and therefore that'll have a direct business impact. And it may be the same at universities if that service or that experience, that student experience, is not what meets the expectations of the customers or the students. But where I think the similarity is absolute is when I bring in leadership and look at the environment and the culture in which the activities that you guys are doing on a daily basis takes place, and how well that environment is, how vibrant it is in terms of both your own staff and the students who are experiencing that service. If I take Rolls Royce, for example, and some of the examples I would use in Rolls Royce, I think you could maybe find some synergy, hopefully, in what's maybe going on at universities. When I was appointed director in Rolls Royce, just imagine a facility. These universities have been here for hundreds of years, but Rolls Royce is only there in East Kilbride for 50 odd years. But the West of Scotland culture, which some of you may recognise, I know there's a lot of people here from the East, but a West of Scotland culture, very trade union dominated. Employees and management suspicious of each other. This is where you might find some synergy. We had silos in our organisation. Didn't talk to each other. When we were letting our customers down, we're more content in blaming each other rather than understanding and looking inwardly about how we could change to give that service better. The view I took at that particular time was that incremental change for that business was not an option. It was facing tremendous challenges, not very similar to the challenges that you face today, but challenges in terms of our very survival was under threat. So how did we approach that? I took the view very early on that incremental change was not going to fix it. We needed to transform the business, go through a business transformation. And that brings in what I was saying to you about team-based working. You know, it seemed to me that I had just under 1,200 people at that time, 1,150. I had 7 layers of management. So from myself as a director to the guy in the shop floor, and this is a guy, by the way, who adds the value all the time to the product that we sell, who makes the money, there were 7 layers. You know, 7 layers of, which I would say is barriers to what I was trying to do. This is the first big mistake I made, of the many mistakes I made when I was doing that particular role. I stood up in front of 1,200 people and said, we're really going to transform this business. We can do it this way or we can do it that way. And remember, it's a trade union, so they needed to vote on it. I wanted them to go this particular way, which they chose to go. And I said to them, look, none of your roles or jobs will be the same pre the change what it will be post the change. And it will take us 2 years from start to finish. Well, what did I know? Really nothing, I suppose, you know, because I was 10 years into it when I left, and we were still, there's never an end point. When you're challenging a culture, in my experience, and this is what the universities may need to be thinking about as they move forward, there's no end point. I mean, to me, you can change culture, but the real trick is embedding and sustaining the culture change so that you actually change the behaviour, you know, over time. So that was the first big mistake I made. And also the next mistake I made was when I said that no one's job would be the same post the change what it was pre the change. Well, maybe, and remember what we're doing here, I mean, it's a huge culture change. I mean, again, when I look at some of that, what Anne was saying, you know, about, you know, we had guys who, inspectors, who used to have a card who would inspect an aero engine component and make a decision on it and mark it with a pencil. When we actually introduced an integrated business system called SAP, some of you may be aware of it. You know, smashing, so very hard to bring in, but great. But we then had to ask these guys to use computers. Now, you might laugh at this, but these guys didn't have keyboard skills. I mean, that was the length, that was the extent of training that we needed to do to challenge the culture we were in. And like everything else, Anne again talked about confidence. At first they were very unsure, very uncertain, and that's where the support needed to be in place. Once they got that confidence, they wished they had had the computers X amount of years ago. But we're about 2 years in. Remember, I've reduced the layers down to 4 layers. And that was a very, very difficult time for me. But we're about, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years into and we weren't making the progress we thought we'd make. And the reason why was, remember I said about no one's job post the change, pre the change? Well, the guys in the shop floor, probably 800 of them at that time, they would say to us, or did say to us, look, every time you ask for change, you know, we're always asked to change, but you fat cat managers or directors, you never change. And there's a certain amount of truth in that. The way that Rolls Royce used to have a management reorganisation, nobody lost their jobs. You just kind of moved the deck chairs around and you were given a new responsibility. So we're nearly 2 years into this change and we hadn't made any progress. And we came to the decision, the reason we weren't was because we had moved from a very direct and control organisation with a blame culture to an organisation on team-based working where people, you know, were given the responsibility for the first time in their lives. I mean, I had 11 or 1,200 people. And you just take an engineer as an example. We come in at 7:45 in the morning, leave at 4:30. Ask them to do an engineering role and they would do it fine. But they same people left the organisation and were captains of golf clubs, amateur dramatic, school boards. We were never tapping into the potential that these people had. So we needed to create through leadership the environment that truly allowed that business and they people to give us what I would call discretionary effort, which people will give if they're given the opportunity, or ask ideas. I mean, how do you think that Rolls Royce used to make managers? This, I don't know whether this is the same in universities, but Rolls Royce used to make you a manager if you're a good engineer. Well, you might be a good manager then. But what skill sets did you have that allowed you, were going to be lead and be able to motivate and take people with you? Now, I don't know what it's like in universities, but I don't know whether, and I don't want anybody to collapse here, heads of school are promoted because they've been in the job for 10 or 15 or 20 years, and that's their qualification for that job. Now, they might be a good head of school, but is that surely cannot be the way that we expect our leaders to take on these leadership roles and do the task and meet the challenges that we're going to ask them to meet. So what did I realise? The biggest barriers to the change were the leadership, the management team itself. And I had to take 15 managers out at that particular time, which was really hard for me because I knew these guys personally. But it was the right solution for the business, and we did flourish because of that. And it allowed me to bring in leaders in the business who, not because these guys didn't have strengths and attributes, and again this might apply to universities, but the strengths and attributes to an organisation we're trying to leave behind rather than the one that we're trying to take forward. But it allowed me to bring in people more suited with what we were trying to do in team-based working. And again, I think, I'm stealing maybe some Anne's line, but I think she did mention it earlier, talking about, students and asking them questions. For me, feedback is critical and crucial. And I don't know how you guys get feedback, in the universities. If I remember right, and I'm going back many, many, many years, there used to be an evaluation sheet, I think, left at the back of the classroom, and, But is that truly how we want to get feedback? Because maybe, the student might think, if I fill that in, and I'm quite critical, that might not be the best position to be in, and maybe it's anonymous anyway. Or I can't be bothered because I'm tired and I didn't enjoy that lecture or whatever. But surely the most important point, if that is still the system, that the lecturers themselves should be absolutely selling that to their students about how important it is that that is filled in so that they can get direct feedback. Because none of us is perfect. None of us needs to know all the time how much more we need to do to improve and deliver the role that we are trying to do. Two things about feedback then in this story about Rolls Royce. Getting back to this 28 or 32 jobs that Anne keeps on going on about. Rolls Royce, you were in there for 40 years, 45 years. I had one guy, for example, who I gave a presentation to, who left in 2005, but it started in 1955, just after the war. Not long after the war. 50-year service. Fantastic. One of the things it gave us as an organisation was that when you lose someone with that experience, you can replace them with another person. But how, this lack of knowledge and some of the nuances and the things that this person would have, how do you retain that in the organisation was a bit of a problem. But anyway, I used to ask these guys when they were 65, or when the girls were 60, this was before they changed the legislation, to come up and speak to me. And principally come up to my office to speak to me because I'd like to thank them on behalf of the organisation for their service, and for me to thank them personally for the support they gave me in trying to lead the business. Well, I've got to tell you, if you get somebody at 65 giving you feedback, you get the best feedback you're ever going to get, I tell you. I used to get it both barrels, boom. Now, the good thing about it was they might have said to me that I was the worst director that they'd ever had. Well, I might not agree with that, obviously, but I'd always ask them to tell me why they thought that. Because there might have been things that they thought that I should have done, didn't do, and so on, that maybe I could look at and then improve my own personal contribution. And another one, remember it used to 4 levels. I always tried to get down to 3 levels because I felt that that would be the optimum. I never actually quite managed to do it. But 4 levels from 7 was certainly an improvement, but also to support that, and probably I should have said is that out of that working week, I would spend at least 10 to 12 hours communicating with people. I always remember the previous director said to me, you can stay in your big office, he says, all day and never be criticised, but you'll never win the hearts and minds of your people. And it's absolutely true. You need to engage in a leadership role with your people, students, staff, I would say all the time. Anyway, one of the things we used to do to supplement, to try and engage and get closer, was to have what I called a lunch meeting every day, Tuesday, where I would take 12 of my employees no management team there. They would sit directly with me, and we would, I mean, I had maybe 2 or 3 messages I was always trying to maybe get across, but no set agenda. People were invited to come, and on most occasions people came. And it was a case of, you know, not what he said, because somebody else told me that. They could hear it directly from me. And I think that is a very, very powerful thing, and challenging as well, and whether it's in business. I mean, sometimes they wanted to talk about football and other things, and yeah, go on. But it was a great medium for having that communication. And I'd encourage anyone in the leadership to do something where you truly can engage and connect with your people. But again, a lesson for me, after one of these sessions, I met one of the girls who worked in our customer business team. And I said to her, how did you enjoy the breakfast meeting? And she's at the lunch meeting. And she said, it was very good. She says, but you talk too much. Now, I thought for a microsecond about how I could dismiss her without an industrial tribunal. You know, that was going through my mind. But I said to her, she said, oh, I hope you don't mind me saying that. And remember, we were challenging a culture. And I said to her, look, June, her name was, look, June, if I was talking too much at that lunch meeting, it just means, remember this team thing about assessing people in teams? Maybe someone else in that team or that group who wanted to make a contribution was not being allowed to make it because I was, if you like, hogging that limelight. So we had a wee bit of laugh about it, and she went away. But when I was talking to my senior leadership team later on that day, the point that we made and agreed on, we were actually making progress. Because when in the past would an employee of Rolls Royce said to a director, you talk too much, they made more importantly when they were given the opportunity. So in universities, for example, I don't know what your communication is like between your staff, between your students, but it seems to me in a leadership role, feedback is absolutely critical in order for us as individuals, because as we keep on saying, it's a changing world, and I'm sure some of the things that I'll be saying today are even outdated as I'm speaking, and certainly as we move forward, if you like, maybe more outdated. But there's no doubt the challenges we face in your sector, in business, both in the public and the private sector, are going to be very difficult as we move through these uncharted waters. But it seems to me that, you know, in a university, you know, needs to keep the tradition, the heritage, the research, the academic excellence, everything I spoke about earlier. But there may be a need for them to look at how they organise themselves differently moving forward to meet the challenges. Work more in collaboration, talking about research pooling, things that you can do together. Maybe you don't think it's ideal, but maybe it's the things that you need to do in order to deal with the circumstances that you find yourself in. But in terms of the internal organisation of the universities, it just seems to me that people are your most important asset, whether it's your students or whether it's your staff who you should be supporting and need to support, who may also feel the need to be supported as that change goes through. I mean, one of the things that we used in our management team, and I had myself, with balanced scorecards. I'm sure some of you heard of balanced scorecards. And we used to be assessed 3 times a year on these balanced scorecards. Now, it used to be in the old organisation. I took my director of production. He or she would be assessed against things that you would maybe expect, quality, you know, cost and things, traditional things, but also in a new team-based working organisation. And, you know, this time does not allow me to really, I mean, I've not done it justice, you know, the team-based working and the business transformation. But with that balanced scorecard, we look at things, how well are you supporting your people, about coaching and training, how well are you looking at that? Now, just like a traffic light chart, you know, red, green or amber, you don't want to get too many reds, but you never get killed if you get a red, you know. You may get killed in the old organisation if you get a red, you know, but we wanted to leave that well behind. I mean, the reds are supposed to be there to say, if you've been irresponsible, yeah, you would deal with that. But if you needed some training and support yourself, that would be a good indication about what you need to do and work with that plan with you. I mean, at the end of the day, again, maybe this is a bit controversial to say to you, but how many of your leaders or many of your people have lost their jobs because of poor performance? Now, for me, in business, you know, you don't want anybody to lose their job. But at the end of the day, you know, sometimes you get to that position where that is the only route available to you in order to deal with a specific situation. So the internal look going forward that maybe universities need to look at may revolve around some of these issues that I have discussed today. But it needs to, from a leadership point of view, get away from a blame culture. That people are not encouraged to open up. People feel free to be able to criticise if criticism is justified. And just one last example. 4 or 5 years in, again, to business transformation, it's Friday night, 7 o'clock, I've actually been out, I was going to say going to discotheques, but that gives me away my age, maybe clubbing or wherever people go nowadays. My director comes in, got a real problem, he said. What's the problem? Well, that Pegasus engine, you know, the Harrier, with the Royal Air Force RD-7 and the Sea Harriers, that engine, Pegasus engine, vertical takeoff and landing, supposed to go to test beds that night. The customer needed it for Sunday. Won't go to test bed, why not? When the guy who'd been building the engine, and these are big, big, big engines, when they moved it from its horizontal to its vertical position and ready to transport it up to the test beds, they heard a nut it was rattling inside the compressor casing. Now, if we just let it go to the test bed, when we put the engine in test, that nut might have found its way out and there'd be no harm done. But it could have wrecked the compressor and cost millions of pounds worth of damage, or thousands of pounds, nearly £1 million worth of damage. Now the point was, in the old organisation, see the guy who'd done that, he'd have just walked away from that, and we might never have known until it failed in the test bed. But he'd actually held his hand up, and he actually worked with us. So we're trying everything to try and get the engine out of bed that night, but then the problem was we needed to strip the engine. Now, the RAF had the job to go into the customer, to talk to the customer as to why he wouldn't be getting his engine when he expected to get it. But again, it was another indication of we're making progress. It may be a difficult thing for us to deal with, but we're making progress. So I think to sum up then, the business transformation, leadership, leadership, as I said at the beginning, is a key for me. Whether it's in business and whether it's in universities. Our mantra that we use with our people, it was true 10 years ago, as it is today, as I'm sure it'll be true, and when Anne talks about the future in 20, 30, 40 years' time. Our greatest potential resource lies in untapped creative skills of all of our people. And if we can create an environment through leadership that truly allows our people to develop and realise their potential, people who have maybe been let down by our very same education system for whatever reason. And that's why, again, that skills committee and the skills utilisation group I'm on, it's not just about getting the attribute, it's about how well you utilise it and use it through the development and the working life of the particular individuals. But if you can create an organisation through leadership that allows that fertile ground to really allow people to realise that potential, I think we'll be in a better position to meet the challenges that we face going forward. Thanks very much.